guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing with you my first trimester symptoms. So this is going to be kind of a roundup video. I've been doing pretty consistent weekly updates, like every 2 weeks, on my pregnancy symptoms, but I thought it might be helpful to just round up all the symptoms that I experienced in the first trimester. This pregnancy was a doozy and very different than the first trimesters I experienced with both my boys. In case you're brand new here, my name is Erica. I have an almost 5-year-old son, a 2-year-old son, and I'm currently 16 weeks pregnant with our first baby girl. Very out of breath, which is definitely a symptom that I was experiencing in my first trimester. But let's jump into it. Let's talk about all these first trimester symptoms. Definitely let me know down in the comments if you are pregnant, currently pregnant, if you experienced any of these first trimester symptoms. One symptom in particular I did not experience with either of my 2 boys, but did experience with baby girl that was like such a huge, like lasted for so many weeks and was like such a weird first trimester pregnancy symptom. So anyway, let's jump into, so I'm going to be talking about my symptoms week 3 to 12. So week 3, for most people, that is even before you've missed your period. I found out that I was pregnant with this baby when I was 7 DPO, 7 or 8. My timing is like a little, we're a little unsure, but either 7 or 8 DPO, I got a very faint positive pregnancy test. And I wrote down my symptoms for that week that I found out that I was pregnant, but like technically it was week 3, like I still hadn't missed my period yet. A lot of bloating, especially in the evenings, and we're talking like uncomfortable bloating down in my uterus area. So like, you know, normally if I'm gonna bloat a little bit, it might be a little bit higher up, but early pregnancy, definitely nice and low. A lot of like little bouts of nausea in the morning, which is an interesting one because that for me changed during my first trimester. A lot of sensitivity in my breast region, my boobs, and some vivid dreams during week 3. So then week 4, more bloating, definitely like felt like my boobs were growing. I have a naturally small chest to start, so like in my first trimester, my boobs go from being like super flat and deflated, especially after breastfeeding 2 boys, to being like so full, which is like wild. I wrote nausea in the mornings, early afternoons, and shortness of breath during the night. Week 5, which is still like super early, first trimester, I wrote nausea, bursts in the morning, starving at night, craving super healthy foods, and I wrote contacting my endocrinologist. Week 6, I had light brown spotting. So this was something I had experienced spotting during my first trimester in my second pregnancy, so my pregnancy with Theodore. But it like happened, I want to say super early on, like it was like 12 DPO or something, a tiny bit of spotting, and then I want to say like a few weeks later a tiny bit of spotting, but that was it. But this pregnancy I experienced a lot more spotting and some bleeding that like made me really nervous. So week 6, I had spotting, bleeding. I wrote suckers are helping a lot. I got some like little ginger suckers from Pink Stork that like really helped with that nausea in the beginning. And I wrote, okay, so that was like week 6 was a lot of spotting. Week 7, I had some more spotting, some like a little bit of blood in my CM. I wrote nausea is a little worse, feeling nauseous in the evening, sort of queasy. I wrote sort of queasy all day. That was 7 weeks, 4 days. I had my pregnancy confirmation appointment, which was so exciting, and talked about like my due date and stuff. And then toward the end of week 7, I tried out the Unisalmon B6, which is supposed to help for nausea, and it did not help me. It did not help me, which is so disappointing because I was like so excited to try it. It was something that I didn't know about for my pregnancy with Hugo, and then when I was pregnant with Theodore, by the time I like found out about it, I was already like I think I was already like close to my second trimester, like in the beginning of my second trimester, and that's usually for me when the nausea goes away. And so I didn't get to try it. So for this time I was like, oh awesome, I'll try it and hopefully it'll help, because a lot of people rave about it, and it did not work for me. It like almost made me feel worse, which was nutty. 8 weeks, I wrote, again, some more spotting, a little bit of bleeding. And this was something that obviously I had kept in contact with my doctor about and called the office about. Because it was so light and like was sort of happening on and off, they had said that like it wasn't something to be overly concerned about, but it still like made me feel better to actually record it and have it written down. I wrote, nausea has switched during week 8 to be predominantly in the afternoon and evenings. So if you watch any of my like bi-weekly pregnancy updates, then you'll know that I was super hopeful at the beginning of the first trimester that my nausea would stay in the morning because it just felt more manageable in the morning. Like, we're so busy in the mornings and taking kids to school and packing school lunches, and it just kind of felt like, oh, I can definitely like get through the nausea if it stays in the morning. And then like, you know, afternoon and evening I feel great. Like, but then it switched. And around 2 months pregnant it switched, which was such a bummer. Sorry, I'm just making sure that that's focusing, which was such a bummer. And then I wrote 8 weeks 4 days, threw up a lot. And then 8 weeks 5 days, feeling a little bit better but nervous to eat because I had thrown up so much the night before. Week 9, nauseous in the afternoon, again a tiny bit of red in my discharge. Definitely feeling more nauseous in the evenings. I wrote, not necessarily an aversion, but water hasn't been tasting great. So this was like the beginning of the like weird switch for me. So I mentioned to you guys that there was like a weird symptom that I experienced this pregnancy and didn't experience with my other 2 pregnancies, and that is an aversion to water. So I wrote 9 weeks 2 days, not an aversion. Like, I didn't feel like it was an aversion, but 9 weeks 3 days I wrote strong aversion to water. So that was like the weird, and this lasted up until I'm 16 weeks now. I want to say this lasted up until like I was 14 weeks. Like, it lasted a really long time. The thought of water, the thought of drinking water was like disgusting. Like, I could not stomach it. I couldn't even take little sips. Like, it was just gross, which is so unlike me. I love water. It's freaking water. Like, normally I have no problem drinking water. I'm not the type of person who doesn't like water. I love water. I don't drink other things. Like, I don't drink juice, I don't drink soda, but I could not drink water. Just so bizarre. So I had to rely heavily on like Pellegrino and seltzer, juices like orange juice. I didn't even really like love the idea of a flavored water. Like, I think it was just the flatness of the water that was like, that didn't sit well with me. But anyway, that was so strange and like such a huge first trimester symptom. So bizarre. I wrote light bleeding, 9 weeks 5 days, super cold. Past couple of days getting very tired, need to nap midday. So my body temperature has also been like the weirdest thing. Like, my whole first trimester, I would say a little bit into my second trimester, I've had like weird body temperature stuff, and I talked to my doctor about it. They think it's probably due to my thyroid because my iron levels look great. They look fine. So at first I thought maybe I was anemic because I was freezing all the time, but apparently I'm not. So yeah, just like super cold by the end of the day, like my fingers, my toes, and like that type of cold that like you feel like you can't get rid of. Like, it's in your body cold that like might happen to you once during the winter time, but like is happening to me every single night. I wrote 10 weeks 3 days, threw up in the evening, queasy in the afternoon. So for this pregnancy, another symptom that's been different than like my boys was that I threw up a lot more. So I remember feeling really nauseous with Theodore, but not throwing up quite as much as I threw up with this little one. I wrote really nauseous right before I fall asleep. 10 weeks 4 days, napped in the afternoon. Find that if I nap in the afternoon, I don't feel quite as nauseous at night. Ice pops at night. I wrote the little like hands up emoji. 11 weeks, I wrote back on medication for my thyroid. 12 weeks, we found out the gender. We found out it was a baby girl. I wrote still feeling so nauseous and gross in the evening. Sometimes lemonade helps and hoping it goes away soon. 13 weeks, I wrote sometimes feel a little bit nauseous in the evening, but mostly fine. Feeling really cold at night still. Starting to feel super hungry during the day. A lot of heart arrhythmia. We had our nuchal scan, which went great. And that was at that appointment was when the doctor told me that my iron levels looked great, baby girl looked great, and I got referred to a cardiologist. So that's the entire first trimester. It was a long one. Like, it felt it felt long. And now like reading back all these symptoms, I'm like, yeah, that was a lot. That was a lot of things to go through. And a lot of things to experience. I will say that like I'm so grateful that my nausea has gone away now. I still feel like a tiny bit nauseous right before I go to bed, but for the most part, sorry, my contact lens is bothering me. For the most part, I feel really good. But some like weird first trimester symptoms, right? Like the aversion to water, super weird, you know, like weird little cravings. But anyway, that's the roundup of my first trimester. Now that I'm into my second trimester, I'm definitely like got my energy back and definitely like feeling a little more like hormonally, feeling hormonal, like emotionally, but like feeling a little more balanced than I was in my first trimester, if that makes sense. So definitely let me know if you experience any. I would be especially interested if you experience an aversion to water too, because like that was such a weird one. Let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye, friends.